Hi, everybody. My name's Allison. Welcome to my channel. Today, I have a very special guest, Jerry Marzinsky. We are so excited to have Jerry here yet again for another interview. And I want to go ahead and introduce him for those of you that have not seen the first interview. He is back, and Jerry is a retired licensed psychotherapist with over 40 years experience working with and studying the thought processes of the psychotic and criminally insane patients in some of the most volatile psychiatric institutions in the nation. Jerry is a commercial pilot, a certified scuba diver, and long-distance motorcyclist. He has held the positions of second lieutenant in the Arizona Civil Air Patrol and assistant scoutmaster. He was awarded the state of Arizona's Materius, okay, guys, you know me, I'm the worst at pronouncing, Service
Merit.
Award and Pima College Apple Award of Teaching Abnormal Psychology. His formal academic training comprises of a BA in psychology from Temple University, a master's degree in counseling from the University of Georgia, and 2 years of study in a PhD program, psychology program. He is the co-author of An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind. Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower is currently has a private practice in Arizona. And this is Jerry's book. And I'm going to screen share in just a second to show you. Thank you, Jerry. Oh, I'm so glad you're here today.
Good to be back with you.
Great. We've got some wonderful topics to cover, a lot of information out there. And I think for the people that are just joining us for the first time today, because we have a lot of new viewers, can you describe what your book is about and describe schizophrenia?
Well, schizophrenia is one of the top 10 illnesses on the planet, according to the World Health Organization. So it's it's a serious. It's not a physical disease. Now, the psychiatric mafia will say it's due to a biochemical imbalance. That's a complete lie. It was made up by the drug company Eli Lilly in the 70s when they came out with Prozac. They needed some explanation for why their drugs worked, and they didn't have one. So they just made that up out of thin air. They knew it was wrong at the time, and then it just caught on. So then the psychiatric mafia and the educational institutions started teaching that mental illness was due to some kind of chemical imbalance in the brain. But if you watch what psychiatrists actually do, you go into their office, you know, they don't ever give you any kind of test to see what chemicals in the brain are out of balance or by how much. Never. I have never seen it. In the 40 some years I've worked around psychiatrists, they don't have any test to find a chemical imbalance of the brain. They have no baseline. So if
Yeah,
you have a
that's what I was
chemical
thinking.
imbalance of your brain, you think, well, what's the baseline? What's out of balance or by how much?
Right.
They have no means of detecting a chemical imbalance. It's a bunch of crap. You know, they don't
Jerry,
even know what the chemical balance of the brain should be.
can you turn your volume up a little bit or maybe the microphone closer to your mouth?
Yeah, let me put the microphone. How's
There we
this? Is
go.
that better?
Yep, much better. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy not to have a baseline. I mean, you need to have some standard of measurement if you're going to make that claim.
Yeah, and they don't have one. There is no chemical imbalance. It's been soundly disproven now, but they're still pushing it. They're pushing it to sell these toxic antipsychotic and antidepressant drugs. It's a money, 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 money. And those drugs don't cure anything. All they do is tamp down symptoms temporarily. They don't get rid of schizophrenia. They don't get rid of depression. Okay? It's 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 money, money.
Yeah.
They don't want a cure for schizophrenia. They're making $14.7 billion a year, billion, not million, billion, selling these toxic antidepressant drugs that with long-term use will shrink your brain. They're doing permanent neurological damage with long-term use of these drugs.
And then they're going to be selling you even more drugs to treat the new symptoms of the brain shrinking and any other secondary symptoms
Yeah,
or health
they
issues.
use Cogentin for that. So when the neurological symptoms of this toxic antipsychotics start showing up, the quivering, the shaking, the tongue darting. Then they pour on cogentin, which tamps down those symptoms while the antipsychotics are still rotting out your system. And not only that, they're giving this to kids. They're giving it to kids like 5 years old. They're giving these antipsychotic drugs. There's to tens of thousands of kids. They don't care.
That's child abuse. That's incredible. Oh my God, the kids. Wow. What would you say is the most common form of schizophrenia? Because there's,
Paranoid schizophrenia is the most common type. There's
okay.
several different types, but paranoid is the one where the people are hearing voices. It's the most common one. There are other types. There's undifferentiated schizophrenia. There's, epiphania. There's catatonia. There's, but the paranoid ones are the ones that are the most common. It's the single biggest problem. Um,
Yeah. I'm from California, and I remember as a kid when they closed down the mental institutions and they just basically turned everybody either out onto the street or their families had to then take care of them if they had families, because a lot of families kind of either turn them over to the institutions or abandon them there.
yeah, that was due to Proposition 13, which was a real estate rebellion on the part of the California public. They were sick of paying these high real estate taxes. So they went, okay, well, we'll just get rid of the psychiatric institutions. They're costing us a fortune.
Yeah, I remember Prop 13, right?
And then it just swung all the way across the nation. So I remember I was at the Central State Hospital, a massive psychiatric hospital. It had 10,000 patients there at the time. It sprawled over 3,000 acres. It was the size of a small town. And that swept through, and they said, "Okay, we're going to start working on closing down the hospitals." And here they were. They brainwashed the psychologists. They were, "Oh yeah, it's better if they be around a more normal population instead of this bad population that they're around all the time." Those people wouldn't take those antipsychotic drugs voluntarily while they were in the psychiatric institutions and when they were being handed to them. They still wouldn't take them. And eventually, almost all of them went off at some point. And here they are expecting these people to somehow get to a mental, uh, mental health center. Those were overcrowded almost immediately. They didn't have enough of them. So what happened is these people, they had no way to survive on the outside. So they started selling drugs and robbing people and doing illegal things, and they all ended up in prison. So the prisons now are the state hospitals, and they think they were saving any money. It costs much more to keep somebody in a prison than it
Right.
does in a state hospital.
Right, it's big business.
Big business. And a good portion of the population in prisons are mentally ill patients,
Right.
costing the state much more. And then here's these unstable psychotic prisoners going in there. Then they're brutalized for years by the other prisoners. And after they're cold and they're better professional criminals, they come out of there harder and more violent than ever. And they release them out on the public, going, okay, your sentence is up.
Right.
And they claim that they have mental health treatment equivalent to that on the street. And the mental health treatment on the street is poor. What's happening in the prisons is even worse. It's a
Oh,
joke. It's a friggin' joke.
I could just imagine. Yeah, I mean, we are seeing the results in real time,
Yes. So
especially every major city.
right, the crime rate continues to increase. The prison population continues to increase. Yeah. And
Yeah,
society's paying for it on both ends, both monetarily and by the crimes that are increasing on the streets.
right.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I'm in Florida now, and I do see a little bit of it here where I'm at. I think the weather makes it a little more difficult for them. I think they're hiding under a palm tree somewhere to get out of this heat and humidity, but we do have them here. But California, because it's the most beautiful state and it was the most giving state at one time, that it just provided the perfect breeding ground for what you see today, which is a disaster. The releasing all these people, and then you've got people that are migrating from the rest of the United States to go there for weather. Maybe they don't want to be homeless in Chicago during the winter. So they're literally migrating there. It's just become a mecca. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. What they're doing is nuts. And here they are showing all these murder movies. But, by the time a teenager gets to be a teenager, he's watched, you know, thousands and thousands of murders on the TV. So
Yeah.
here they are on these with these movies, like uh, hey, this is the way you handle your problems. You get a gun and you go shoot somebody. So here they are programming these kids, go get a gun and just deal with it. Just go shoot somebody. And, and then they want to take away the guns of the people of the United States to um, protect themselves. And then they got these violent video games that revolve around violence and killing things and killing people. And these things, they say, oh, they don't have any effect. Bull crap, they don't have any effect.
Oh,
You
they
know,
absolutely do. I think it's a way where they are allowing like this almost like a demonic takeover of these kids because they're in this state of mind where sometimes if they're just watching, that's a very passive state of mind, but they're actively engaged in that intense energy and they want to kill, 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 kill. That's a lower vibrational energy.
that's right. And you look on the television every time you turn it on, it's murder mysteries or some court case where somebody violently murdered somebody or war stories or it's all violence, violence, violence.
Right.
And then they go after the gun. That the gun's never shot anybody. It's the person behind the gun that's doing the shooting. The
Right.
gun's it's a hunk of metal.
I totally agree. I'm an American. I believe in the free speech and the Second Amendment and our
Yeah.
Constitution, the whole thing. And they are really chipping away at it, and they're doing a really good job,
Yep. They
you
want those
know?
guns. They want them badly.
Yeah. Look what happened to Canada and Australia.
Yep. Yep. New Zealand. Look what
Yes,
happened in New Zealand.
right, right. So they're coming, but I think that when we see all of this, to tie it back into this type of schizophrenia that you've documented, and what you see with the voices, can you tell us a story or something that you've seen, an incident?
Yeah, I got an interesting one here. This fella, this happened in the prison. So it was the prison where I could do the most investigation, without being interfered with. Um, there was one fella who he was a kind of like a career criminal. He'd been busted on a lot of drug charges and robbery and all kind. He had a long record, and he was using cocaine, and he went psychotic. Okay? Um, so I started working with him in the prison because I had a group of prisoners around me that would tell me what the voices would be telling them in real time. Okay, so not all of them would do that, but I always had a group of 10 or 15 prisoners who, when I was working with them, they would tell me what the voices were telling them in real time. So I had like an inside window as to what was going on in their minds. Okay. So this one fella, he had recovered. We worked with him for maybe close to 6 months or a year, and the voices left. And he told me this story after the voices had gone. So he was clinically sane at that time. And he was talking about his voices. He lived in San Diego, and he was using a lot of drugs. He was hearing voices, and he trusted those voices. And one day they listen, we know where there's a Sesamelia pot field up in Oregon. And they said, go get yourself a couple of burlap sacks and a machete and take the $300 or something, whatever you have, and we'll show you where it is. So he said he got the sacks, he got the machete, he took his car, he filled it up with gas and took the money with him. And the voices led him step by step all the way up to Oregon. So they were telling him where to turn. the whole way. And he went up there, and they took him down like a 23-mile dirt road toward the mountains. And when the road ran out, uh, there was no more road. He said, "Okay, what do I do now?" And the voices said, "Off to your left, there's a hiking trail. Just go take your sacks, bring the machete, and go look for the hiking trail." You know. So he found the hiking trail, and he walked up that hiking trail for 3 or 4 hours. And they're telling him, "Okay, it's just a little while longer. Just keep going." And eventually, he got to this giant Sesamilia pot field, right? And he's like, "Holy cow!" You know. And the voices are like, "Yeah, we told you. We told you." So he cut down a bunch of the pot. He filled up the 2 burlap sacks, and then he went back down. And he says, "Okay, what do I do with it now? Where do I sell it?" And they said, "Well, we know a park where you can sell it." And so it turned out to be a national park. Um, and he went to that park, and he was selling this sesame. He was making a fortune. He said he bought all the prostitutes he could deal with. He bought all the alcohol he could drink. He bought all the cocaine that he wanted, and he was having the life of Riley. But he said the voices were fishermen. They wanted to go fishing. And I went, "Come on, you're pulling my leg." He goes, "No, no." They wanted to go fishing. So he said, "I bought some fishing gear, and me and the voices went out to the Columbia River, and they were telling me where to throw the hook, how long to leave it there, and when to move somewhere else." And he said he was catching fish after fish after fish, and nobody else on the river was catching anything. So I went, "Oh, come on." He goes, "No, no, honest to God, this happened." And he was sane when he's telling me this. Um, So he did that about 3 times. Went up and got you know the burlap sacks of uh, marijuana, and then on the 4th time he'd run out, and he says, "Well, I need to go up there and get some more." And the voices said, "Nope, don't go up there. They're waiting for you. If you go up there again, they'll kill you. Take what money you have and go back to San Diego."
Hmm.
You know, so that's what he did. And he left with more money than he had to come with. And what was interesting, the entire time I was working with him, and I found this a little bit suspicious from the start, he would say his mother would talk to him. Now his mother was deceased, you know, and I was a little bit skeptical of that because the voices will play like anybody. I mean, they can mimic anybody the person knows,
Mhm.
and then because they can read your mind, they can bring up incidents that happened to you that were bad. So when he started saying, "Hey, I hear my mother," I would test every time. I'd ask him what she's saying, and he would say it was, "Oh, she's just telling me to stay away from the gangsters, and don't be selling uh, contraband on the yard, and change your underwear, wash your clothes, that kind of stuff." I mean, it's all kinds of stuff mothers would say. So I would check every time he said he heard his mother. I would check out what she was telling him. Um, So when he finally recovered, we were sitting in the office for one of the last sessions we had, and he said, "My mother wants to talk to you." And I went, "She wants to what?" She goes, "Yeah, she wants to talk to you." And I said, "Well, what's she got to say?" He said, "She's telling me to thank you for helping my son." And I said, "Well, you're more than welcome." And I asked her, I said, "What are you doing over there?" And she said, "I'm checking people in." And I said, "You like a secretary?" And she said, "Yeah, I like a secretary." And then I went to ask her another question. And she responded back. She says, "Everything you need to know is in the Bible. I shouldn't be talking to you."
Oh,
And,
interesting.
and I got transferred off the unit shortly after that. So, that was an interesting story.
Yeah, definitely. Are you in touch with him at all to
No,
find out what
I'm
happened?
not,
Nothing.
I'm not in touch with any of these guys I worked with.
Okay.
You know, there was another one. I call it the pipe. I mean, what they taught us in college and graduate school, schizophrenics were way too disorganized to do any kind of advanced planning, any kind of complex planning. So I just bought that. I mean, that's one of the things I hated about uh, studying psychology in college. There was no way for you to check out anything they were saying. You know, it's like they give you all these books and they say, okay, memorize these and spit them back to us. But there's no way to check out. Like in engineering, you can go and you can check it out. You can see what's happening. You know, you can go into a lab and work with the material and actually see what's happening. The only segment of psychology where we could have done that was experimental psychology, where you can go into a rat lab and you can run these schedules and you can actually see the rat's behavior change.
Hmm. Would that be
But all the
physiological psychology where you're looking also at the chemicals?
there's no way to check it out.
You
You know,
can't.
you don't have access to a lab. You don't have access to a mental health center. You don't have access to a state hospital. You don't have an access to a psychiatric hospital. You don't have access to a mental health center. And in the whole time I was working, you know, like the 45 years I was working in mental health centers and state hospitals, private psychiatric hospitals, doing contracting, I never, ever saw a researcher on the front lines. They will not allow them on the front lines. They
Crazy.
won't allow them into mental health centers. They won't allow them into hospitals, psychiatric hospitals. They won't allow them in state hospitals. You know, they won't allow them in, and they
That's
make
where
all
you get
these
the best. Yeah, that's where you get the best results.
well,
They
you know,
don't
that's
want
where
that.
no, they don't want that. You know, they would make up all kinds of excuses. Oh, it's too dangerous, or we can't take the risk, or insurance won't allow us, or risk management won't let you in. Um, or you could get hurt. I mean, it was just all this crap. Bottom line is they wouldn't let researchers in there. So where's the research being done? It's being done in universities that are under the control of big pharma. They were taken over back in the you know after World War II, uh, where they made it illegal for medical medical institutions, medical training institutions, universities to graduate anybody who didn't take a course in it was a curriculum that revolved around drugs. And
Wow.
it was the Flexner report. Now, let me see if I can find that.
Yeah, so much for natural medicine in their world.
No, no, they made it illegal for the they
Amazing.
made it illegal for the universities to graduate anybody who didn't take what do you call it, a pharmacological. I don't see where that is now. Yeah, they called it the Flixner report. So it made Reiki illegal. It made naturopathy illegal. It made the Tesla violet ray illegal. It made naturopathy illegal. Uh, so the only legal doctors were medical doctors that were controlled by the deep state and the big pharma.
Amazing.
This happened under the Rockefellers, I believe.
Yeah. I remember reading about that. And the amount of drugs that they're pushing right now. I mean, it's like they want everybody on something, whether it's cholesterol, high blood pressure, instead of actually treating the symptoms. And then for schizophrenia, you said that is it lithium? I know you didn't say that in this interview, but is it lithium that they give that, or is that just bipolar? Were they
What
trying
for
for
schizophrenia?
schizophrenia? If they were going to try and give them a medication for it?
No,
Because
they
you
get
would think too,
there's
if
a
they're not,
bunch of
go ahead.
antipsychotic drugs. There's different ones, but they're all toxic.
Yeah, and you would think too, when they stop taking them, the voices are going to come back,
Yeah, and they do.
you
You
know?
know, so you look at what's happening right now in the United States. There's close to 50,000 people a year kill themselves in the United States. That's as many as died in Vietnam,
It's a lot.
year after year after year after year. You
And a
know?
lot of them are service members,
Yes,
you know? the VA has a lot of work. I know that the VA in San Diego, they had a PTSD workshop for people for a while. And I think that they had some pretty good results, but I don't know what the long-term results are for that study.
No, they're not getting good results at all.
Ah, okay.
So, there's something telling these people to kill themselves, and that's what the voices do with schizophrenics.
Yeah.
You know, they're the first pattern they run is that they're negative. They're constantly derogatory. Uh, they're destructive. They're insulting. They're abusive. They don't say anything good. So that was one of the first patterns I saw, and it's like my question was, what holds them on such a negative pattern? Why do they stay on that pattern? How come they're not random like regular hallucinations that are all over the place? Some are good, some are bad. They're everything in between. No, these supposedly auditory hallucinations, as psychiatry calls them, are consistently negative. They don't sway off of that. And if
Right.
they are positive for any period of time, then uh, they only do use that to kind of get the person's trust, and then they hit them in the back.
And that sounds like a demonic entity to me.
and
I
and
mean,
they are.
it's a way to get that attachment, that hook into you, you know?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So what brings these things on is severe mental, physical, emotional, sexual abuse. You Ouija boards. I've seen a lot of people go psychotic on Ouija boards, and meth, amphetamine just kind of opens people up to these things. It's like, come and get me.
Yeah, they're the most susceptible. And I think so for young children too, that's Ritalin, right?
Yep.
So you see these,
Ritalin is an amphetamine.
so they're opening these young kids up to
Yep.
have this type of psychic attack at such
Yep.
an early age.
And a number of the prisoners were on Ritalin when they started. And they were feeling good. And I would ask them, I said, you were feeling good on the Ritalin. Why did you keep upping it?
Yeah.
You know, and they did. They moved up to meth, and then they went psychotic, and they ended up in prison.
I remember when I was in college, I had a young friend that was in one of my classes with me, and he said that his younger sister was on Ritalin, and she was a teenager. She was still in high school. And he used to tell me that he would go and steal her medication and take it for himself
Yes,
because it got him high and he liked
yes,
it the same thing. So you could imagine it's not just the people taking it, they're spreading it around. Other people are taking their meds too. Just like if someone has pain medication at home, maybe somebody else wants that. Let's say it's Valium or I can't think of the other one right now that they give out a lot of, but you've got people that want to have access to that. They'll go and steal the medication. So it's not just the one person that's prescribed for it. It just keeps kind of mushrooming out.
and it is an abusable drug.
Yeah, I could just imagine. Can you talk a little bit about the trauma victims and how that opens them up for these voices?
Well, people who've been badly abused are uh, they're functioning at a very low vibrational level. They're depressed, they're anxious, they're self-conscious. Um, they're at a low level. Okay. Now these entities, they hit us all. They don't just hit schizophrenics. And when you're walking down the sidewalk and you just have this horrendous thought, whack the guy in front of you, or if you're driving, I wonder what it'd be like to turn into oncoming traffic, or if you're standing on a bridge, what would it be like to jump, kind of thing. Um, they hit us all, uh, but they particularly go after those that are wounded, psychologically wounded. So they're like sharks in the ocean smelling blood. And they jump into these people and they pour gasoline on the fire to make them, they feed off of negative emotional energy, which is one of the things I found at the state hospital too. The prisoner or the patients were telling me that after the voices attacked them, they didn't have any energy left. They were just energetically eviscerated.
Oh, they
And
suck
this
the
was,
life force out of them, right?
yep, this was one after another, after another, after another, after another. You know, and it's hundreds of them. It's one of the patterns that when the voices attack, their energy level goes boom. It goes down to nothing. Now they weren't even aware of that until I mentioned it. Okay. And then they said, well, now that you mention it, yeah, that does happen. You know, they would just thought they were feeling bad because of the voices. The voices kept them up all night. You know, I had remember one guy telling me, you know, that the voices attacked him all night, and by the time the morning came up, he couldn't even get out of bed. He was so energetically drained. But it's a consistent pattern. When the voices attack, their energy is gone.
Right.
So I did a little study on that, and kind of like it was just, you know, like a little graph. How much energy do you have before the voices come? 1 to 10 scale. How much energy do you have 1 to 10 after the voices attack and leave? And I ran that through scores of schizophrenics at the state hospital, and we did an analysis of variance on it, and it was statistically significant. Right? So
Yeah.
something is happening there. But you ask them, well, where did your energy leave? You know, where did it go? You didn't use it. Where did it go? They go, I don't know. I have no idea. You know, where'd it go? Oh, I don't know. So I'd ask them, I'd say, well, if you stuck your hand in a fire 100 times and each time you got burned, what's burning you? They go, oh, the fire. Well, if the voices come 1,000 times or 10,000 times, like you've heard them in the past, and your energy disappears every time they come, where do you think your energy's going? They go, well, I don't know. They were prevented from finding that out. And later I found out that's the last thing that the voices want them to understand, that they're being sucked dry, that these things are parasites, that they're turning their energetic level, their energy negative, and that these things are taking their voices. So they're feeding off of us like we feed off of cows. You
Yeah,
know,
they're calling it loosh. Right. I've heard this.
like loosh.
Right. Yep. They just feed on that life force. I wonder, it would be interesting. I wish we could have a real study where it shows, what's your life expectancy, because the parasite doesn't want to kill the host unless it can suck it dry and then jump to a new host.
You know, I wondered about that, and then I had one guy write me one time, and he said, "Where the voices benefit with having the person kill themselves is that it puts the entire family in anguish."
Oh,
And that made sense because, you
more
know,
feeding.
when somebody kills themselves, of course, the family goes, "Well, what could have I done differently, or what did I do to cause this?" Or, you know, it's a very traumatic
Right. Right.
thing.
For everybody. And it stays with you. It's a deep wound.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. And I know that's why you put together that list of these 30 patterns that you have for these entities, what you
Yes.
see.
So, yeah, what these patterns are, the operational definition of the voices. Okay. So here's the psychiatric mafia saying these voices are hallucinations. Don't pay any attention to them. That's a lie. Just a bold-faced lie. They haven't done any research on the voices. They think they're hallucinations. That's what they were taught in graduate school. That's what they were taught in medical school. So they got, who's going to study a hallucination except somebody crazy like me?
Right.
So
Right.
they haven't done any research on them. They have no idea what they are other than hallucinations, but they don't act like hallucinations. They run patterns, and if they're running patterns, they can't be hallucinations. So, you know, the second pattern I noticed when I was working at the state hospital is the voices are anti-religious. They didn't want these people going to church. They didn't want them talking to preachers. They didn't want them reading the Bible. One patient came in and said, when the voices come, I read the 23rd Psalm, and he said they react like worms thrown onto a hot frying pan. So
Oh,
they don't like Psalm 23. They don't like Psalm 91. They don't like Amazing Grace. They don't like the person going to church. They don't like preachers.
yeah. They don't want anything that would be relatively positive.
No, no.
Wow.
So I noticed on my ward, the schizophrenics on my ward, when the preacher had a ice cream social and invited all the patients in the rehab center to that social, the schizophrenics were laying in bed on the dingy ward, staring at the ceiling or reading, murder mystery books. And the first time I saw that, it got my attention. And the second time, I started asking them questions. Why don't you go down there and get some ice cream and cake? That's a rare commodity in this place. Oh, I don't want to listen to preachers. I don't want to go to listen to any of that crap down there. I'd just rather stay up here by myself. So it turns out the voices are anti-religious.
Yeah.
They don't want the person going to church. They go crazy. And so I did a little research on that and found that if the voices are very weak, if the person goes into church, they shut up. If they're of moderate strength, then they get louder and they start mocking the preacher and they start saying stuff like Jesus couldn't even help himself. He couldn't even save himself. What makes you think he's going to save you? Right? So they get loud and they interfere with the patient listening to what the preacher have to say. And if they're very strong, they just drive the guy out of the church. He gets up and he will run out of that church.
Wow.
So they're anti-religious. And this is after talking to hundreds of schizophrenics. All of them are saying the same thing. Why would a hallucination be anti-religious?
Right.
Why would a hallucination just be consistently negative?
It's
So
amazing. I'm telling you, it's amazing. I mean, I read your list and I'm glad we're going to go through it because I think people need to be aware of this, that there is something definitely out there that is a parasitic entity that's attacking people. I see it in my practice as a psychic. People that come to me for readings, I can see it in them or I just see it in the general public.
yeah, so they foster and create negative emotion. That's what the negativity is about. That's why they're telling the schizophrenic, you're stupid, you're ugly, nobody likes you, uh, nobody can stand you. Every negative thing that you could think of, they're telling these people.
They have
You know,
access to that memory bank.
yeah, and yeah, they'll access every rotten thing the person ever did and bring it out of their memory and go, look what you did. Look what a rotten person you are. Okay. So that's why they're negative. They want to generate that negative emotional energy that they feed off of. So
Mhm.
they're feeding off of us like we feed off of cows.
Yeah.
You put a cow out to pasture, it eats grass, bring it back in, isolate and milk it time after time after time. That's what they're doing to the schizophrenics.
Yeah, and the cows don't know they're going to be slaughtered, you know?
Right.
Yes.
So what makes it so, what do you call it, diabolical is that the voices sound just like tens of thousands of thoughts that go through your mind on a normal day. There is no difference for the most part in timbre or loudness. It's not like we are the voices, kill yourself. It's not like that. It sounds just like your regular thoughts going through your mind. And I've had a number of prisoners ask the voices, "Who are you? What are you?" And they will say, "We are you." So they want you to believe that the thoughts coming into your head are you. And all this crap that they're telling these people to do that is getting them in trouble. They want them to believe that they are their thoughts. And nobody ever asked, no psychiatry, no psychology, nobody. I mean, I've been through enough counseling and psychology. Not one of them have ever asked, where do thoughts come from? They don't even deal with it. And
They
it's one of the most important questions that they could ask. They don't even deal with it. It's totally ignored. And you think because, okay, it's happening in my head, I can sense my thoughts happening in my head, that they belong to you. It's just automatically assumed they belong to you.
right.
So when these things start putting negative, intrusive, nasty thoughts into your thought stream, you just assume that they're yours.
Yeah, it's really subtle because I think a lot of
Very
people that are
subtle.
actually watching this are going to think, well, do I have it? Do I not have it? It's like what they call doctor's disease. When you start studying medicine and you start reading about the different diseases, you start wondering, well, do I have that? Do I have this? Do I have that? It's really subtle. But with this, when people start saying, well, I have that inner voice inside me that I listen to, And I do have these thoughts, but nothing's telling me to kill myself or nothing's telling me to do something negative. Even if they had something, it might be that the voice is really small that's starting off. Maybe it's a lower level voice, or maybe there is no voice in some people, right? But
Well,
it's very subtle,
yeah, every time you get angry, you know, Swedenborg says every negative thought you have doesn't belong to you. You know, now Swedenborg was a Christian mystic who lived some 300 years ago, and he was one of the top scientists of his day. He
right?
was the chief mining engineer for the Queen of Sweden. He was, one of the leading academics of his day. He was like the Leonardo da Vinci of his day. And at the age of 50, he says Christ appeared to him and said, "Okay, drop all this scientific stuff. I'm going to give you access to heaven and hell. Okay, I want you to speak to the spirits both in heaven and hell, and then write about what they're saying. Okay, and then write books for the people on the planet to see what these things are." Okay, so there was one day where I was visiting a friend of mine who was a staunch Catholic, and he had a book by Emanuel Swedenborg on his one of his coffee tables. And just out of curiosity, I looked at him and he had the curly hair like they did 300 years ago with the wig. And I said, "Who's Swedenborg?" He said, "Oh, you don't know who Swedenborg is? Take that book and read it." So I did, and I was like, "Holy cow!" He was describing what the schizophrenics were hearing. Okay. Now, at about the same time, I found a fellow who wrote The Presence of Other Worlds. He was a clinical psychologist named Wilson Van Dusen. He was working in a state prison, no, a state hospital up in Northern California. Okay. So I read his stuff and I went, my God, that's exactly what I'm seeing. You
Right.
know, now he also found that the voices were not hallucinations and he would talk to them. His tactic was to make friends with them and try to learn about them by being friends with them. Okay. So he even got his patients to take, he had an MMPI, he had that Rorschach, he had these
Right.
psychological tests. He would administer them separately to the voices and then separately to the patient himself. And he said when he scored them up, the voices were much more psychotic than the patient was.
Wild.
You know? So he was trying to make friends with them to try to learn about them. And he would not, even though he talked about them as if they were independent entities, in his writings, he always called them auditory hallucinations. So he always bowed down to the establishment.
Yeah.
You know, so it was easier for them to blow him off. But when I found out what he was writing, he was a Swedenborgian also, and he found that the voices matched exactly what Swedenborg was writing about when he was writing about the evil spirits that he was interviewing. And then you look in the Bible, Christ had cast these things out of people some 23 times in the Bible. And it's almost like that's ignored, by Christians. You
Right.
It's like the Muslims are more aware of these entities than the Christians are.
They are, especially the jinn.
Yeah.
Right.
They have prayers
Absolutely.
against them. They know that they work. They call them the evil whisperer that whispers in your ear. You know,
Yeah.
they're much more aware of them than we are.
And I'm not a big religious expert by any means, but I think that the Catholic Church over the last few decades has tried to not perform exorcisms on people. But then I've just recently heard that there's such a calling for it now that they actually want to open up centers to train priests to do exorcisms because of what had happened over the last few decades, like with Father Malachi Martin, what he did and
Hmm.
some other people that they actually feel like now there's a need for it. But
Oh
it's,
yeah, there's always been.
yeah, but it's been ignored for a few decades. And
Yeah.
maybe that's one of the reasons why we're seeing more of a takeover by people with the type of entities that you're talking about.
Yeah,
because it's subtle. And I think a lot of people might not know they even have them in them when they talk about attachments.
I know for decades, as this evidence was mounting up, that these voices were not hallucinations. You know, I was well past the point that anybody else, I didn't want to believe in demons. I
Right.
didn't want to, I didn't believe in them. I didn't want to believe in them. But the more evidence kept coming in, it was like, it was overwhelming at some point where my denial system was just, it was on the verge of breaking. And then when they started talking to me directly through these patients, it was like it collapsed. It was like they are entities, you know,
Yeah.
and
And that's the simple way, or not the simple way, but I think that's more the palatable way for people to say it, instead of saying demonic entity, because then they feel like they're getting stereotyped, they say an attachment or an
yeah.
entity. You know what I mean? It's like that seems to be more of an acceptable term versus using demonic, because then it's got that all the stereotypes that come with it. It's a loaded term.
Well, they're parasites, and that is a loaded term. But
Absolutely.
yeah, they mean you no good.
Right.
They hate the human race. They
Yeah.
absolutely hate the human race, and they hate kids more than the rest of us.
Yep.
And then you look at what's going on right now. The United States is the biggest child trafficker on the planet right now. The United States government.
It's
They're allowing
unbelievable.
these hundreds of
I
thousands of
can't
kids
believe
come
it.
over the border, and they're not even tracked. They have no idea where they're going.
No, they're disappeared.
They're disappearing, and they don't care.
Yeah. I
You know,
think that
this
part's done
is
on purpose.
yes.
Oh, it's
This is
crazy.
you talk about demonic.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. Eh, yeah, it's just we're seeing some crazy stuff. I just saw a guy do a remote viewing on it where he did it on Sean Combs, P. Diddy, and that he said when he remote viewed that he saw all this child trafficking coming in and that they're actually having these child auctions and that he was part of it and that I haven't been following everything that's been going on, but that he is that these child auctions are just sending people to different places, the elite or anyone that can afford to buy these children. Who knows what
Yeah,
they're doing with them?
yeah.
I mean,
And
and they're just passing them around.
they're paying off the government.
Right,
They're paying off all these senators and congressmen. You
right.
know, you look at what's happening here in Arizona. The Supreme Court in Arizona just said California just said it's illegal for you to even question whether somebody's a registered voter. They just passed a law to that effect. Here in Arizona, the Supreme Court stated that it's illegal for these illegal aliens to vote, and they voted it's legal to keep the border open also. So
Uh,
those buzzards are all paid off. They're paid off by the Sinaloa cartel and Soros and this child and drug trafficking.
Yeah, I think they're paid off, and I think some of them are blackmailed. I think
Yeah,
some that got involved and, maybe they were in compromised positions with either prostitutes or being pedophiles themselves, and they were caught in a compromising position and it's on tape somewhere and they're being
yep,
blackmailed
yep.
because
Just like Epstein did.
yep, yep. I think that this is all really coming to the forefront. And I would imagine that some of the libtards that are out there that hear this or that even see any of that stuff, they're still going to be in denial about it. I think they're
Yeah,
so far gone that they can't even admit that this stuff is going on. They don't
yeah.
want to look
They're
at,
they're blind as bats. They're taken in by the
they're
mainstream
insane.
media's lies.
Yeah, it's
You
like
know,
this MK Ultra.
and
It's
if you
insane.
look at these patterns that these voices run, that same crap is coming over. The same patterns are coming over the mainstream media right now.
Right,
The negativity. Look at all the negativity, anti-religious. You look
right.
at what's happening in France. They're burning down hundreds of churches in France.
Yeah,
And they're
yes.
not even going after the people that are doing it. They burned down
No,
the Notre Dame. They burned it down.
right. That's been going on for years. I've been following that since at least I've known about it since at least 2012. That's been going on for a long time because of the types of people that they're allowing to come into their country too,
Right.
you know? It's really amazing. And then you look at all the wars that are being started.
Yes.
Talk about demonic entity and feeding off loosh.
Oh, they love
I-
those wars. They love the suffering. They love the killing. They love and you got hundreds of thousands of these people that are going to be maimed for life.
Right.
They're not going to be normal for life. They're going to have traumatic brain injuries or limbs blown off, and they're going to be miserable for life, along with the trauma of the battles.
Right. And then their families that are trying to take care of them, they don't want to see
Right,
an injured loved one. And so talk about all that trauma, the entire
right.
region, nothing is left out,
They love it.
nothing. It's really amazing. And so it's like that's something that to me would be like a huge demonic entity would be feeding off that. I mean, like something that is like up in the sky, like something that we can't even imagine, like the size of a cloud. It seems like something that we just can't see.
Well, I know that
Not just something that
the
takes over an actual human, which would be maybe a smaller size. Not to say it's not powerful,
yeah.
but it seems like when there's a war zone that it's really a huge, huge entity that's feeding off something like that.
Oh, yeah, and the prisons too. You can feel it. It was
Yeah,
palpable. Every time you'd walk into the doors of that prison, you could feel it.
I
I
would
mean, it
imagine.
was palpable.
Yeah. They own that place.
Yes, they own that
Exactly.
place.
Right.
So
Amazing. God, Jerry, I'll tell you, for you to get up and go and do that kind of work every single day takes so much courage and energy. I mean, we're talking about energetic work, but to have the energy and the strength to go and do that every day, knowing that maybe some of that is being sucked out of you too when you're around it. You can't help
well,
being
it
exposed to
it
that.
it would, and I didn't realize it at first. So it was like if I saw more than two schizophrenics a day, I would come home and I was wiped out. I
Mhm.
had no energy. So, and I didn't know why that was at
Right,
first, you
right.
know. And so I just made this rule, see one or two a day and that's it, no more. And then
Yeah,
see other kinds of patients otherwise. And
yeah,
yeah, it was draining.
yeah,
Um, but it was so fascinating learning about these voices that it was like it was another dimension, it was another world, it was another universe, you know.
yeah.
And finally getting at what causes schizophrenia. It's the voices that cause paranoid schizophrenia. If you get rid of them, all symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia disappear and the person returns back to normal.
Type of healing, right?
So it's not any biological bullcrap that they made up. It's not any genetic anything. It's the voices, which they call hallucinations. They don't want a cure for schizophrenia. Like I
Mhm.
said, they're making $14.7 billion a year selling these toxic drugs. They reduced the research monies for schizophrenia down to a dribble. You know, they're putting hardly any money into research for schizophrenia. So when they got criticized for that, did they put more money in? No, they manipulated the statistics. They ruled out all these different kinds of schizophrenics that they didn't count. you know. So they made it look like they were spending a lot more money than they actually are.
Uh,
Lying to the public.
there you go.
And
God.
they're barking up the wrong tree anyway. They don't know what causes schizophrenia, but they'll tell you, oh, it's a chemical imbalance of the brain, which makes no sense.
Yeah, especially when like you said, there's no baseline.
There's
Or
no
how can you
baseline,
measure
there's no
it?
test, they can't.
Yeah. So there's just another lie.
Yeah, it's lie after lie, and their DSM is a lie too. That their dictionary, their Bible of psychiatric illnesses, all
Right,
made up, totally
right.
made up.
I remember being exposed to that when I worked in a law firm. And then I was a literature student. So when I wanted to do a creative writing class or create something, like a short story, I would go to the DSM-3 and look at behavior. Like when if I wanted to write about a schizophrenic patient, or a character in my book, and I would look at that, but it didn't ring true. I'm not talking about schizophrenia, but bipolar, I don't even think bipolar, I think just came on the scene. It was DSM-3. So I'm not sure if bipolar was in DSM-3 or not, but that going that far back, that was the one that I was using at the time. and to go ahead and do character analysis. But it didn't ring true because I was reading the great works like by Marcel Proust, by Shakespeare, and others, and their characters, these are the great works, right? They did not they did not match the DSM-3 because I was looking at character analysis and the DSM-3 was wrong compared to what you would see in Shakespeare or Marcel Proust. This is the pre-pharmaceutical age.
Yeah, they make it look like these are definite, definitive linear illnesses. They're
Yeah.
not. They bleed into one another, and
Yes.
you can have more than one. So back in 1952, there were 106 psychiatric disorders, and now there's in 1980 there were 256. Now there's 297. So they're making them up year after year after year. This group of psychiatrists gets together and makes these things up, and they vote on them. Oh, should we enter this one? These are the symptoms, and then 2/3 of those guys are tied up with big pharma.
And they're
So,
probably woke now too.
oh,
They're
I'm
they're
sure,
part of
I'm
the
sure
woke
they
crowd
are.
because they want everybody to be sick. And if you don't
Yes.
believe in their political philosophy, then they're gonna make you sick,
Yeah, you will
mentally
not
ill.
go into a psychiatrist's office for an appointment and not come out with some kind of toxic drug.
Mm. Wow.
They're big pharma drug pushers. That's what they are. And they spend hardly any time talking to these people. Now there's some good ones out there, but most of them, they and without any kind of test whatsoever, they just prescribe a drug for you based on what they think you should have. And then they adjust it up and down, or they add some, or they take some away, or they mix them all together. It's just a subjective cauldron of
Mm.
drugs.
And I think a lot of people that are mainstream, I think a lot of them feel that if there's something wrong, they need to go to the doctor. And I think they feel ripped off if they don't walk out with a prescription,
Well, they got to
you
give them
know?
something, and that's
So
all they got to give them.
yeah. And so I think that it's kind of like this weird vicious cycle. I've seen other people be like, well, I don't feel good. I'm sick and I'm going to go to the doctor. And if they don't get a prescription, if the doctor says, no, just go home, just drink your chicken soup and, get lots of fluids and just rest and you'll be okay. They kind of get a little pissed. Like, where's my antibiotic? Where is this or where is that? They want that medication because they feel like that's going to help them. They've been brainwashed and
Yes,
programmed into thinking that they have to have a pharmaceutical.
right. And you look at the medical. See, psychiatry for a while tried to get these psychiatric disorders labeled um, diseases,
Mm,
you know, to make it look like they were a medical thing. And the medical establishment said, no way, these aren't diseases. We can give antibiotics to somebody who's got an infection and it kills the infection, it goes away. The stuff you're doing, it doesn't cure anything. It just merely tamps down the symptoms. So they didn't get away with that. But people
good.
still think that when you have something wrong with you, you need to take some kind of pill.
Right.
But with those 50,000 people that are killing themselves in the United States every year, what kind of report card is that? And a great number of them are on antidepressant drugs,
Mm,
some of which have warnings about suicidal ideation. And this is happening not just once, it's happening year after year after year, and it's increasing.
right.
So you look at, you know, what is the track record of psychiatry and psychology? It's piss poor. If that many people are killing themselves, they're failing. They're failing. Yeah.
I
And
agree. I
and it's
agree in that aspect.
so that's where, and regular psychotherapy isn't working real well either. You go in there and you talk about all these traumas and blah 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 blah, and they don't go away. They're still there. So in a couple of weeks later they come back out again, and here they are again, and you're reacting to this trauma over and over and over again. Like, um, you get into a situation, you get into a lot of trouble, and you go, I'm never going to get in this situation again. And 6 months later, you're right back in the same exact place again.
Exactly. I was just going to say that with like abuse victims, like let's say someone's caught in an abusive relationship and they're like, oh, I'm going to leave you. I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore, but they're stuck in that pattern, in
Yes,
that loop. Even if they leave, they go back. Or if they do leave that person, then the next person they
they
meet.
find another one just like it.
Right, exactly. They're just
So
stuck in that pattern. And even if they got counseling, they might be in there going, yes, 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 it's right. Yes, I feel healed, but that pattern has not been changed.
see, there's a new psychotherapy out there called the Mace energy treatment that I think I spoke to you about before.
Yes.
That what happens in a trauma is you have this horrible feeling, okay, and it just doesn't go away. So the ego comes and goes, "Hey, let me handle this. I'll take care of it for you." And it takes it and it buries it in your subconscious mind, and then it locks it down. So you're no longer aware of it. You're no longer feeling it. But what happens is that whoever caused that trauma, whenever somebody else similar to that person shows up in your psychic sphere, that trauma triggers. And what happens is the ego said, you know, you need to either attack that guy or run from him or avoid him. So the problem is out there. The problem is it's that guy out there making you feel that way, and it appears that way. So you either get in a fight with that guy or you avoid him or you stay away from him. And then the universe sends you another person just like that. And they just keep coming and coming and coming. And it's the universe's way of telling you, hey, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
So what the fellow who invented this energetic psychotherapy, because it works totally with energy. It's not anything like regular psychotherapy. Your thoughts are energy, your mind is energy, your memory is energy, your feelings are energy, your spirit is energy. you know so it's energetic. It goes in there and it will find where that trauma is buried, and it will dissolve it. Okay, so you'll still remember the trauma, but there will be no emotional attachment to it.
It won't affect you. Right. And
uh,
this is
but
this is what I do. It's energy work. And this is why people are always walking around. You need to vibe high, have that high vibration, and that's really going to help you. But with that mace energy, I know a lot of people are thinking, well, what exactly is that if they've never been exposed to it? Is it energy work? Is it electric? What is the
uh,
actual energy then that you're talking about?
well, what Mace found, now he was a master mariner. He was a ship captain. He drove these big freighters across the ocean. So he had to be aware of uh, magnetism, electrical fields, how energy flowed from negative to positive. You know, but he was also interested in psychology, and he was very interested in how the human mind worked. So he had an out of a body experience, and he realized that there were no feelings when he was out of his body. Right? So they were something that were of the physical, biological realm. Right?
Okay.
And he saw that energy flowed from negative to positive. Okay? He saw that the spirit was positive. There was a very powerful positive energy in the body. And he also found that what causes these negative feelings are what he called a negative identity. So you have two kinds of identities in your body. You have a positive and a negative.
Right.
Okay? So you may have a positive identity as a mother, as a car driver, as an airplane pilot, or these are identities that you've created on purpose to survive on this planet. Okay? Negative identities you did not create on purpose, you did not create consciously. During a trauma, they were thrown into your subconscious mind and buried. Okay? So they would trigger every time that situation would come up again. So they would either trigger on somebody or they'd trigger on a situation. But anytime a negative identity is created, it does affect you in the physical universe because it's like a negative computer program running in the background. Right?
Mm.
So you may have something happen to you when you were 7 years old where you felt, well, I'm worthless because this thing happened. Okay? A trauma happened, and you decided because of this trauma you were worthless. That gets buried, and that's now running in the background, like a virus in the background of your mind, sabotaging you constantly.
Right.
It affects everything you do. You don't allow yourself to succeed. You know, you don't allow yourself to hang around good people. You because of this program working there. So one of the problems Mace had was, where in the subconscious did the ego bury this negative identity? Could be anywhere in there. Okay? So that's where he turns to spirit. He found that the mind is not what people think it is. All the mind does is create images of where you put your attention. Okay? That image is a link between negative and positive. It's the bridge between them. Okay? Um, so what he found was that an image, if you form an image of a negative identity, the characteristics of a negative identity, okay, it will take on and say, okay, what does this thing look like? Okay? That picture is where that negative identity is located in the mind. Right? It took him years to figure that out. So once you connect that negative identity with the spirit, which happens through your attention, which is the pipe, okay, the energy flows just like in physical universe. The negative energy in that negative identity will be sucked into the positive energy, because positive attracts negative, and it will drain that negative identity. Just like if you you get a brand new car battery, you charge it up full, okay, and then you drain it down to nothing, it will stay dead. You
Yes.
can't recharge it again.
Right.
So that's exactly what happens with the Mace energy method. That negative identity is located, and then it is drained. It's drained until it vanishes. And once it goes, the person can feel it. They can feel it's gone. It's very palpable. They can sense it. They can feel it. And you ask them, okay, do you feel worthless now? They go, no.
Oh,
You know,
that's so
what's
amazing. I think
it,
everybody needs that.
it's almost. So when I saw that, you know, I got Mace's books and I started reading them. And then some guy wrote me and he goes, uh, I have somebody you need to meet, which is different from the kind of emails I usually get. He wasn't asking for anything for himself. He's going, you need to meet this person. At the very worst, she'd be a jolly old lady.
Yeah.
And that got my attention. I'm like, this is a weird one, you know. So I figured, okay, I'm going to follow through with this and see where it goes.
Yeah.
You know, so it turned out that this jolly old lady was the chief Mace instructor for the Mace organization,
Oh, perfect.
and it was like we hooked up, and we hit it off almost immediately. And I'd read all Mace's books and whatever else I could find, and I saw that this stuff was working.
Yeah.
And she goes, you need to become certified. And I go, well, why do I need to do that? It's already working. I got it working with my clients right now. She goes, oh, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So when she said that, I went and I got the certification. This stuff works better than anything else out there. It works better than pills. It works better than regular psychotherapy. It works better than Reiki. I mean, and it's almost magical. And what's so strange about it is that the therapist does not have to know what that trauma was.
And I think that is so amazing and helpful for anybody that's experienced trauma, especially if there's shame attached to that type of trauma.
Or sexual abuse that they don't
Yes.
want to be beating up over and over and talking about over and over.
Yeah, you don't
They
want to
don't
relive it.
they don't have to do that. It's you're not recounting there's certain parts of it you have to relive, but I don't have to know about that.
Right.
You know,
Right. They don't have to
go
share it.
they don't have to share it. I said, well, you need to go back to this particular moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever that moment is, you don't have to tell me what it is. Just let me know when you have it. Okay.
That's great. And so this, I mean, it's such a great, it sounds so simple, but yet it's so powerful, this type of
Yes.
technique.
Yes.
And
It's almost magical. I mean,
Yeah.
the results are almost magical. I mean, I can't believe it myself. It works with alcoholics, it works with OCD. It doesn't work really great with schizophrenics, but it will get rid of the trauma that these entities feed off of.
Well,
So
that
that,
would definitely lessen the voice, right?
yes, it'll weaken the voices.
Good. Good for them. And then hope, yeah, this is just so amazing. You know,
And so I have several videos on the Mace energy method that I've done with other Mace therapists on my website at jerrymarzinsky.com.
great.
And if you want to sign up for a session, you can do that at my website. You know,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, anybody out there that's listening, I highly recommend Jerry. He is the expert in this field, especially whether it's going to be just regular traumas or any type of schizophrenic inner voice trauma. He is definitely the person that you want to get in touch with because this could be done over Zoom.
Yes,
It doesn't
it's
have to
done.
be done in
It,
person. So you could
no,
be somebody anywhere in the world watching this at any time. They could reach out to you and schedule an appointment.
I'm working with people all over the Western world,
Yeah,
and even some people in Russia have heard about some of this.
it's
So we
fantastic.
we do it over Zoom. We work right over your computer screen. It works just as well as if we're face to face.
That's amazing. And I mean, like I said, everybody's got trauma,
Yeah, you
you
can't be
know?
here on this planet without being traumatized somewhere.
No, that's what this planet's all about. And it's more and more intense as the years go on. So can you tell it, I wanted you to mention a story that I've heard you tell the last time, and I think that this is such a great story where you were talking about being in your office and one of your patients came in and he said they want to talk to you.
Yeah, that was, see, what I was doing, I was coming up with these patterns. So there's like 23 of these patterns, and those are also on my website at jerrymarzinsky.com. So what these patterns are the operational definition of what the voices are. This is how they behave. This is the patterns they run. You know? So it's not like, oh, this is genetic or this is biochemical imbalance where you can't see what's going on. You know, they what the psychiatric mafia did is kick it up into these places where the average person couldn't see what was going on. You go to my website at jerrymarzinsky.com, you look up these list of patterns, and if you're working with schizophrenics or you have a schizophrenic in your family, you will see these things. They'll
Yep.
be right in front of your face.
Yep.
And again, if these voices are running patterns, they can't be hallucinations like the psychiatric mafia has proclaimed. Right?
Right.
You'll see it for yourself. So, what the psychiatric mafia is doing, it's like getting these voices are energetic. They're energy. They're 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 energetic beings. Okay? So they're pouring chemicals in your body, which is equivalent to you know taking drugs and pouring them onto a magnetic field and expecting that magnetic field to disappear. These drugs are not going to affect these energetic beings. They will calm the person down. They will weaken them because they won't be able to generate as much negative emotional energy, but they're not going to cure anything. And neither do those antidepressants. And they're toxic. Okay? So back to the story about what these patterns. So it's as these patterns are coming out, more and more are coming out. I started wondering what would happen if I threw a monkey wrench into these patterns and started interfering with them. And I had this group of schizophrenic prisoners that I would meet with weekly, and I'd give them homework assignments, and I'd say, "Try this and tell me what the voices do." Okay? So didn't take very long before they started coming back and saying the voices don't like you, they don't like what you're doing, they don't like us doing this, they don't want us coming here. Okay? And not just one of them were saying that; they were all saying that. You know, they don't want us doing these things. They don't want us coming to see you. Uh, and sometimes they get headaches, but I have to hand it to them. Virtually all of them kept coming, and the only deal I made with them is I'll do everything I can to help you without getting in trouble.
Yeah.
if you will tell me what's going on in real time with these voices. So I had scores of schizophrenics reporting to me what the voices were telling them, and they all ran these same patterns. And these prisoners didn't know each other for the most part. You know, so they come back in. They're saying they don't like it. They don't want us coming here. Um, and then one of them, on the way out, one day after a session, he turns around in the doorway and he goes, "You know what you're doing is dangerous, don't you?" And I looked at him. I'd never thought about it. I'm thinking, well, they're stuck in your head. They're not in my head. You know, you're stuck with them, not me. They can't come out of your head. Little did I know.
Right.
You know, so I just put that in the back of my head and just kind of stored it. And then let me see, what was the next thing was happened? It was, yeah, it was the one where one of the guys I was working with came in, and I don't know how he got into the medical unit to my psych office, but he knocked on my door. I opened the door and I'm like, "How'd you get in here?" And he goes, the voices want to talk to you." I said, "They want to talk to me personally?" He goes, "Yeah, they want to talk to you personally." I said, "Okay." That had never happened before. Like maybe 20, 25 years of working with schizophrenics, never did they talk to me personally. It was always through the patient. The patient would say, "The voices are saying this." And I would say, "Well, tell them to go stick their head in the toilet," or something like that. It was always through the patient.
Yeah.
But a direct contact, that had never happened. So I'm like, what's going on here? I go, "Come on in, you know, have a seat, close the door." And I said, "What did they have to say?" And these words came out of his mouth: "You have no right to interfere with our way of life." And I went, boom, it just boom. I went into shock. I went, they are entities.
Yeah.
That's when I realized that they weren't hallucinations. They weren't some figment of their imagination. They weren't something in the subconscious. They were entities. So I said something back to him, and uh, after that, I just looked at him like I was stunned. And he goes, "I didn't say that. They said that. Those words weren't mine. They were theirs."
And the
I said,
fact that he's just saying that, where he's got the ability to distinguish that that's their voice and not his. That's interesting too.
"Yeah." He said
Yeah.
that was them. I didn't say that. That was them. Wasn't me. And it would have been somewhat dangerous for him to mess with my head that way. If I found out about it, I could have, like, I could have made his life a little harder than it already was.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, he swore it wasn't me. That was them. You know, um, so it was like a warning. They're saying, "Back off. You know, don't mess with our business."
Yeah.
You know, so and I just kind of went into shock. I closed the office. I didn't see anybody the rest of the day. I let this sink in that they were what I suspected they were, but I wouldn't allow myself to admit it because I didn't want to believe in demons or evil spirits or
Right.
any of that stuff. I
Right.
mean, because I'm around these guys all the time, and if they're evil spirits, but there was something in me that knew, because when that movie Exorcist came out, me and my girlfriend drove to Atlanta to go see that movie, and I was so shook up after that movie that I missed my turnoff for Milledgeville off of I-10 and had to go up to the next exit to turn around. That's how affected I was. So I
Yeah.
already
It
I
was a
already
very,
suspected,
yeah.
that movie scared the bejesus out of me because it was very similar to what these voices were.
Yeah.
You know, so that wasn't the end of it. So I was always asking these guys all kinds of questions. I was asking them, try this, try that, do this, do that, and then bringing them back, and what effect did this have, over time? And
Yeah.
they would tell me. Um, so I was reading a book written by Miguel Ruiz, who was a South American shaman, and it was talking about these things, and it was talking about them being energetic parasites. So I went, that's interesting. It's the same thing I'm seeing with these voices.
Right.
And I brought that book into the prison, and I called in one of the people I was working with, one of the inmates I was working with, and I said, "I got a book here where the shaman is talking about something that sounds very similar to the voices." You know, I'd like to read it to you. And I didn't tell him what it said ahead of time, but what it basically said is these things were energetic parasites. And that's what the end of the paragraph was. I started reading it, he was listening to it, and then it got to the point where it started talking about them being energetic parasites. And then as I'm reading, here's this loud electrical crackle coming from behind my head. And I'm like, I stopped and it was like, what's going on? And then it starts moving along the wall away from me to the wall on my left, my office wall on the left, and it goes crackling up that wall. And it's moving at a 45-degree angle toward the back of the office. And I look at this guy and he looks like a zombie. He's just staring at me with
Oh,
this
crazy.
weird look. And I went, he's going to attack. So I pushed my chair against the back wall and I got ready to kick him off if I needed to, because all they put in the medical unit, they put in female officers. You know?
Oh,
So
God.
so if you got attacked, they wouldn't be a whole lot of you're pretty much on your own.
Yeah,
You know?
you are. That's one of my big complaints in general. Yes.
Yeah. So I look at him and I say, "Do you hear that?" And he
Insane.
doesn't respond. He's just staring with this weird, zombie-like look. He's not moving. He's perfectly still. He's just staring at me. And I move against the wall and I'm trying to see this thing, but it was invisible. I couldn't smell anything. I couldn't taste anything. But I could hear it crackled, and it sounded exactly like an arc welder. Crack, 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 all the way up the wall. And then it hit the ceiling in the back of the room, and it started moving across the ceiling, and it's crackling all the way across. But I could see him, and I was trying to see this thing at the same time. Never did see it, but I could follow its movement. And it wasn't just a brief, 5 or 10 seconds. This went on for 20, 25 seconds. It circumvented, 3/4 of my office. Then it hit the left-hand wall, which is near where I was sitting, and it started crackling down that wall toward me. And I'm
Mm.
like, what the frick is going on? You know? And I'm looking at him, he's still looking like a zombie, and this thing's moving down toward me. And I'm tracking it with my eyes, but I don't see anything. And then it jumps into this Rubbermaid trash can right next to my left leg. And I bend over and I look in there. There's nothing in there. There's no papers. There's nothing. The inmate porter had cleaned it the day before. There was nothing in there except this crackling noise. And then, boom, just as fast as it came, it went dead. It went out. And, I look up and I'm looking at him and he slowly gets up and he goes, I gotta leave. And he shoved out of my office and down the hall. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, get out of here. Go, go, go. You know? And here I was in another shock. I'm like, what am I getting into here? There was nobody I could talk to about this stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody. I had to hold it inside.
Yeah, they'll think
Nobody.
you're crazy.
I thought I was going
They're going to
crazy.
think you've been spending too much time with your patients, and now you're
Yep.
becoming one.
And I thought I was too. Now
Yeah.
I'm like auditory hallucinations. This is, I thought I was going nuts and I couldn't talk to my wife about it. She'd go, why are you picking through the head of these psychotic, criminally insane people anyway? You shouldn't be doing that. So I couldn't talk to her. I couldn't talk to any of my friends about it because they think I was crazy. You know, so Sherry Swiney, my co-author, who wrote the book with me,
Yeah.
we were working with prison reform at the time. So I was talking to her on the telephone one day, and I told her about the voices, and she goes, "Oh, I know all about those." This is 10 years. I've been working with her for 10 years by this time. You know, she had never told me anything about voices, that she heard them. She goes, "I heard them when I was a young woman, and
Wow.
I beat them this way, using the That's a Lie program, which is also on my website under articles." Okay. So I was able to finally have somebody who understood and being able to talk to them about this stuff. You know,
And
so
especially having firsthand knowledge and experience with it, that's really
yeah,
powerful. And to beat it.
yes, she beat it basically with that program that she developed, the That's a Lie program. So basically, these voices are consummate liars. They lie about everything. You can't
That's the
trust.
devil.
Yep, you can't trust anything they say. So once the person realizes that they're liars and he can't trust anything they say, even the rotten stuff, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
They won't keep,
It's very empowering.
yes,
Yeah.
they won't keep any bargain. They won't live up to anything they tell you. They're just consummate liars. They lie about everything.
Right.
So if you realize they're liars and you don't believe what they're saying, then you can start breaking away from them. You have to realize first that they're not you. And that's one of the biggest struggles schizophrenics have. Why is my mind turned on me? My,
Right.
what do I do when my mind turns on me? They don't realize that these thoughts are coming in from somewhere else. They don't belong to them.
Right. And we were talking earlier off camera too, about dementia and about that sundowner syndrome. And it's very similar. It's again the attack on the mind.
Well, that was one thing. I was doing psych evaluations one time as a contractor in a old folks home, and a lot of these guys were demented, and they had something called sundowner syndrome, which was very strange because it mimicked what I was experiencing with the schizophrenics. That when the sun went down, the voices with schizophrenics got louder, and they got loudest and more volatile at about 3 in the morning. They would wake them up, they would give them nightmares, then they would start screaming at them all night. They didn't want them to sleep. If they can keep them up, they would weaken them, and that would weaken their resistance to
Yep.
them. But the old people were the same thing. When the sun went down, they got out of control. They started attacking people, they started acting hostile, they started beating up other patients, they started getting crazy after the sun went down.
Yeah.
So they didn't know what caused that, but they called it sundowner syndrome. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't be the least bit surprised if these entities weren't moving in on these people that whose minds were kind of already shot.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either, and especially at a time where, they're seniors, so they're getting that stage of life where, they're going to pass away soon.
Yeah,
So it's a matter of grabbing that energy again and torturing them in those
yes.
last moments, because the different stages of dementia. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I have to say, I have to chime in here a little bit. I was telling you, I had a client that I did a reading for, and I did a regular spread because she just wanted a general reading, so I can go ahead and provide that. And so for anyone that's watching, it's similar to the Zodiac spread that I do. So I gave her a reading, and then as we were ending, I said, "Well, do you have a specific question? Is there anything in general that you want to ask?" And she said, "Yes." She said, "What is going on with my mind? I can please tell me what's going on with my mind. I feel like I'm going crazy." And so I pulled some cards, and I actually pulled them for this video because I wanted people to see what they were. So when I only pulled three cards for her for that to answer that question. And the first card that came out was the Three of Swords. Then it was the Queen of Cups. And the last card that came out was the Devil. Now, in tarot, these cards can have different meanings, whether it's going to be light or shadow to each individual card, depending on how it's aspected. And when I asked what was going on in her head, she was very miserable. This is her. She had a beautiful energy about her, but she had been taken over by something, some type of an entity and a parasite, like the kind that you're describing. And I asked her in a really nice, matter-of-fact way, "Can you please describe to me what happened?" Because she said that she knows the exact moment that it happened. And she said that she heard an electrical sound, and it came in up through the back of her head, and it went inside of her. And she said from that moment forward, she has never been the same. And this is someone that had their own business, that was, really on top of the world, had everything going for her. And she said it happened 12 years ago. And so when I heard that, I thought of you, and I thought of that story. And we sent her to go and have a type of clearing done. And I'm going to also suggest that she come and see you for the Mace energy clearing. because there's definitely something inside of her. And we've had other psychics look at her, and they are also seeing the same thing. So, for anyone out there, this is a real thing. Psychics see it. Jerry is boots on the ground, and he's written a book on it, which, I mean, if you haven't read it, and I'm going to show it at the end too, an amazing journey into the psychotic mind, breaking the spell of the ivory tower. This is huge, monumental work. And it's just not getting enough traction, I feel, out there. I feel like you're getting exposure, but I feel like really this is groundbreaking work, with what's going on out there. And I mean, I see it in what I do. My other friends that are psychics see it. My friends that are clairvoyant see it. And we also see it happening a lot to young children. And you can see it, like we'll be walking and we can see their eyes and they go solid black.
I was surprised how many children came to the emergency room when I was doing psych crisis in emergency rooms. I didn't think schizophrenia, the voices would affect kids. I thought it was very rare. Boy, was that a wake up call.
I
The
bet.
number, the number of kids that came in hearing voices.
I wouldn't have thought that either. But
It-
I see it like at the grocery store or just on the street. You can see it on the kid's face. And like I told you, what I do is I actually see the demonic entity's face show itself. It's like the face will change. That's what my vision does when I look at a demonic entity. I can actually see them shape shift right in front of me, and I that's what I see when I see these kids that have that possession. And it's really disturbing, but it's
yes,
out there and it's energetic.
yes.
They're interdimensional. They're definitely in a different space than we are, but they go back and forth. It's really amazing. And I'll tell you, your work is just so powerful. I'm so grateful for it.
Well, thank you.
It's also validating for us because when other people can't see these entities, they're like, okay, well, prove it. Well, prove it. And I think that that's really what you've done is that you're able to prove it by asking these people and coming up with these patterns.
Yeah,
And then with what you're doing with the Mace therapy, you're also seeing that that takes the voices away, the power away. It's really amazing.
well, for the most part, it doesn't get rid of them, but it gets rid of a lot of the food that they feed off of.
Right.
And if they're weak, it could get rid of them if they do some other things. There's other things you can do to fight against the voices.
Yes. It's powerful. It's powerful. Well, I know we're coming up on the time. Um, yeah, it's let me see. We should be okay on this. I don't know if Zoom is going to cut me off or not. I scheduled it for 3 hours. So before we go, is there any last thing that you'd like to say to people?
Well, just realize that not all the thoughts that enter your head belong to you.
Yeah,
You know,
especially the negative ones.
yeah. Swedenborg says every negative thought that you have doesn't come from you. Matter of fact, he said none of your thoughts come from you. They either come from heaven or they come from hell. You're the one who chooses which ones you want to pay attention to. So your brain is like a radio set. It's tuned to a certain frequency. You will attract that frequency of thought. So as you increase your frequency, the higher it gets, the less bandwidth that the lower frequencies will have to affect you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's
Who
what
you
we
want
tell
to,
people as a psychic
of
too.
what
Right.
thoughts you want to feed.
Right. Right. And how can people find you, Jerry?
Well, they can go to my website at jerrymarzinsky.com,
Okay.
and there's they can sign up for Mace sessions there. We've posted a number of articles. There's scores of videos that we've made about this topic with a bunch of guests, people who have heard voices in the past, um, and a lot of information is there.
Yeah. Yeah. And And it's good information. I mean, I think it's solid information from what I've seen too. And that's where people can locate these 30 patterns. I know
Yes,
originally it was
that
28 and now it's 30. We added a couple of things. And God, Jerry, there's so much more we can talk about. I can't wait to have you on again as a guest. Um, I know we didn't even get a chance to touch on a couple of other things. We were going to have you read that poem.
oh, I could still do that. That'd only take a minute.
You know what? Let's have you do that. So why
Okay.
don't you go ahead and tell the audience who wrote
Okay.
it and where
Okay.
that came from?
This is what so what these voices do. They'll get in and they'll try to push the original personality out of the way. What they want to do is completely take over. It's not easy for them because the original personality doesn't want them taking over. So they will usually fight back or go, when the voices say, "Hey, whack that guy in the back of the head," the person will go, "No, I'm not going to do that." You know, but what they'll do is they'll just keep pushing, pushing, pushing. When they really take over, then that's rare when they completely take somebody over. But this poem was written by a psychotic killer. It was written in prison. He's in a maximum security unit in a Colorado prison right now. He murdered three people in a drug deal, and he cut his girlfriend up into little pieces
Mm.
and murdered her, and they still haven't found her body. Right? So he's on isolation. He's so dangerous. He's in isolation. I'm gonna put my glasses on to read this. So he's writing about his voices here. Okay, and the name of this poem is called "There Is a Monster." So he's calling his voices a monster. He said, "There's a monster that lives in my head. This monster is real. It's not under my bed. My monster tells me things to do, not good things. It tells me sometimes when the news is new. My monster is crying as it spent all the years, drowning out my courage and disappearing my fears. My monster is strong. That's what I like to think. My monster is coming when it's time to drink." So he says basically the voices get out of control when he drinks. He said, "My monster is ready. My monster is strong. What will I do when my monster is gone?" A lot of the prisoners in prison, they didn't want their voices gone because they become supernaturally strong when they get upset. And that comes in handy in fights. My monster will never leave. That is his plan. It overwhelms me when I'm making a stand. So, I had one prisoner tell me that when he gets into a fight, he just steps back and the voices do the fighting for him.
Wow.
He's not the one fighting anymore, and he seldom lost a fight. So he says, "There's a monster inside of me. I thought I was strong. How could this be?" So, it's like it overwhelms him. My monster has a name too. He walks in the dark whispering Yazoo. Somebody told me the Yazoo was an Indian tribe that I don't know what that's all about. Up in Washington or something?
Yazoo, Y-A-Z-U,
Yazoo.
Y-A-Z-O.
He said, "My monster is watching me. He won't tell you his name. My monster is the shadows you cannot see. His heart is heavy. He plays for the game, so he plays for real. My monster is awake. He wants to be monster. He's as blood from a lake. His bond is with me now, monster. He has nothing else to do. My monster is awake."
Yeah, you know what that reminds me of is what Father Malachi Martin used to say. He was interviewed so many times on the Art Bell show and other places too. I mean, William F. Buckley Jr. even interviewed him, but I remember seeing him on Art Bell and he was calling them the perfectly possessed.
Uh,
They have completely embraced the monster. Maybe they struck a deal with them. They have the dialogues going back and forth, and they've completely accepted it and they like it.
yeah, gives him a lot of
They get
power.
something out of it. Right,
Well,
exactly.
Well, like this guy I was telling you about, he got sex, he got alcohol, he got cocaine, he got marijuana, all this stuff that he loved,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. And
and
that was the trade-off.
that was a trade-off. So why would he want to get rid of the voices if they were taking care of him that way?
Right. Oh, it's amazing. And no one's ever found the girlfriend, and he won't give
No,
up the information.
no.
Did he ever taunt everybody? Like, because the monster inside, does the monster enjoy taunting people, saying, I'll never tell you, or
Well, he threatened his mother. He threatened to kill her
his own mother?
and his own mother. So
Okay.
she's willing to come on the programs too. So down the line, we could get her talking with you also.
I think that's great because then you've got someone that saw this person who they were as a young child. You see the whole spectrum of who they are now and what they've evolved into and how the change is there because it's subtle. I've watched
Yeah,
other people have that, not to be a serial killer, but or a murderer, but to go through that where they've been overtaken.
yeah. And
And it's really subtle.
what's so amazing is that even though he threatened her and he's written her some very nasty letters from prison, you know, she still loves him as a mother.
Yeah. Yeah, she loves the core him, not the demonic side, not that
No,
not that entity side,
no.
but yeah, that's still her
So
baby.
yeah, she realizes that it's the demons that have taken him over.
Yeah. Oh, how sad. That's heartbreaking,
I know.
really, you know. But I think, unfortunately he's embraced that. But I think that if he ever wanted to pull out, I mean, I'm always looking for hope, right? I do think that if someone can walk away from that, which takes a real strong character.
Very difficult to do.
Right. But it looks like with the different types of therapies over time, eventually, no,
I don't think this guy's ever gonna. He won't ever return.
he won't return.
I don't think he'll ever return.
Perfectly possessed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember one guy I worked with when I was working in the what was it? Yeah, I was working in the emergency room. Took me an hour to talk to the person who used to be there.
Wow.
Took me an hour to get to the person who had been taken over and talk to the who had that body earlier.
Oh my God, how amazing.
Yeah, he wasn't coming back either.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. I don't even know what to say. My first thought is if that won't work, try an exorcism, exorcism, exorcism. But I remember listening to people like Father Malachi Martin, and if there was another father, I can't think of his name right now. And by the way, for everyone out there, I am actually not a religious person, but I'm going by stuff that I have seen. And he would say that it would take several times, several exorcisms to get these entities out. It's not like, you just go in for an hour or two for an exorcism and okay, hey, it's done. The job is done. It's not like that.
No, it's not like that. And then if they don't get on a positive spiritual path and stay there,
Right.
then they will come back just like the Bible said. They will come back sevenfold with their buddies. And then
Yeah.
you'll be in worse shape.
I've heard that from people that do clearings. They said that when they clear these entities out or these attachments, that these people have to continue on a spiritual practice. And if they don't, they will come back twice as hard.
Yes,
They just describe it as twice as hard.
I've
And
seen it. I've seen it.
that it not only will it attack the person that was cleared, it will also attack the person that did the clearing. So in your case, you do the mace therapy. If you were like, let's call you a clearer, then not only would they come back and attack the person if they didn't do their spiritual work, but they would come back and attack you. You have to continue doing that protection work and doing your spiritual practice too, because you're
Yeah,
putting yourself out there on the front line.
I do. There was one time with one, it actually came through the screen and I could feel it.
Wow. Yep.
It was hitting me through the screen. I could feel that icky electrical feeling that
Right.
when they're around.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there is no time, space, or matter where they're at. I mean, they can travel. There's no space. There's no space for them. They can be anywhere instantly.
Yeah.
So if you're hearing voices, you could go from here to China and they'll be there.
Yeah. I've seen entities come out of TVs before, all kinds of stuff, and you're like, wow, that is amazing. You're not right in front of me, as a person where it's come out of like a TV or a computer screen. I agree. I've seen it too. It
Yeah,
is wild. I see
that
it.
was weird.
You feel it. I feel
Yes.
it too, but I see it as a psychic. I can see them and I feel that energy when they come, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I can't see
It's
them, but
real.
I can feel them.
It's real.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very real.
definitely. Wow. Well, what a great way to end tonight's show. I love it. I love this stuff. I mean, I see it as a challenge for all of us to do the clearing, to do the work that we need to do on ourselves and to help loved ones around us to end this type of trauma, to not give it the type of control and the energy that it's requiring to basically neutralize it. And if we see these entities, to call them out and to try and clear them because they are everywhere. I'm convinced everybody has something,
Oh yeah.
you know?
And you need to watch the thoughts that are coming into your mind.
Right.
Like you said, every negative thought is coming from them.
Yep. Yep. And there's a lot of them here. That's for sure. Well, Jerry, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And tell everybody again your website. That way they can find you.
It's jerrymarzinsky.com. That's last name is spelled Marz like in zebra, Insky.
Great. And I'm going to have it also in the description below, but I wanted to make sure everybody can hear it and see it at the same time. And Jerry, thank you so much. I can't wait to have you back. I really appreciate you being here tonight. You're just amazing. I love your work.
Well, you're welcome. And if you want to experience the Mace psychotherapy, I mean, it'll get rid of whatever traumas you have.
Yeah.
After an hour, they won't be there anymore. They won't be in your universe ever again.
Amazing. And I think, how many sessions would you say a person would need?
Well, it depends on how much damage there is, but usually they're done in 3 times.
Yeah.
Some of them are done in one, depending on what they want done.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, everybody, you heard that. If you'd like to have your trauma removed, or at least I should say neutralized, please reach out to Jerry. He's definitely willing to help you, and he's really good at what he does. He's an expert. All right, Jerry, thank you so much. We'll
Okay,
see you
thank you.
next time.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.